Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're talking about trauma, what causes it, what sort of symptoms you might expect, and why treating it is such a broad church. In addition to that, we have a conversation about dead birds, the biggest full English breakfast you can ever imagine, and immersive art exhibitions. Dealing with trauma. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Change, eh? I can hear you perfectly well, mate. Yeah, don't like the shambles of starting off like last week's episode was, do we?
Did you expect me to cut all that out?
I did, to be honest. Yeah, to be perfectly honest.
Those shambolic moments are some of, I think, my most joyful moments doing this podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, I thought that was just for you and I, but it's to sharing it with everyone. Yeah,
I do. I mean, I do have a red line. There is a point at which I think, oh no, that's not really for public consumption. But that's usually when you're swearing. I should say that I'm recording this episode today needing a wee, because I thought shall I go and have a wee? And I thought, no, what I'll do is I'll do the podcast before I have a wee, because that might stop me dripping on for too long.
Yeah, I'm just sort of just having a quick drink of tea, really, just to drag this out. Then make it difficult for you.
So, tell me this: you know birds, right?
Birds, yeah.
I think we could agree, couldn't we? There's a lot of them.
Yeah, lots of different types.
Whenever you go outside, or you look up or you listen, you can hear the birds or see the birds, right?
You can, yeah.
How come you hardly ever see them dead?
Although I think they almost biodegrade, don't they? When they hit the ground, they get ravaged and eaten by other animals.
Yeah, but when you think there are so many birds, so many birds that sometimes, you'd be walking along and you think, oh look, dead bird. I mean, I know it does happen, but I reckon the number of times that I've seen a dead bird in front of me in all of my life definitely doesn't feel as if it's proportionate.
No, probably not really thought about it, to be honest. Well, I don't think I can be bothered to think about it too much now, but
I reckon someone goes round and collects the dead birds when we're not looking.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
No, the foxes eat them, and everything gets eaten. It's all part of the food chain, and they do. In fact, dogs eat them as well, don't they? Some dogs eat anything, don't they?
Dogs don't eat them. My dog rolls in them. My dog finds a dead bird. She will definitely roll on it so that she thinks of dead bird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody listens to this when they're just having their supper?
I don't know, but if they're not, they're probably going to get burnt off a little bit by that, aren't they? Should we move on?
I can see that you want to.
I want to talk about dealing with trauma.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's an important issue, isn't it? I mean, one of the reasons I was thinking about doing that, it comes up all the time. Virtually everyone that comes into recovery from drug and alcohol addiction has experienced some level of trauma in their lives. But I think outside of that, if you ask around, so many people have had some quite dramatic sets of circumstances in their life which has caused trauma, and it's affected the way they behave, or it's affected the way they think, and it affects their whole lives going forward.
Yeah.
And I know in the past we've talked about the many factors that combine together to make up the active addict, and trauma, as we know, can play a massive part. But before we get on to the main meat of this, there's a couple of things I just wanted to talk to you about. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, go on then.
Well, two articles I read. The first one was quite a disturbing article I read online recently regarding the upcoming immersive Van Gogh exhibition. But it's currently showing in the United States. It's like there's a lot of virtual reality, and there's projections. You can sort of walk through his painting and all sort of thing. It's supposed to be one of the best immersive experiences you can ever have. Now, in America, they're running 2 special evenings, especially for those who want to or wish to smoke weed during the experience. Yeah, I know. What's going on here? They're charging up to $200 a ticket for it, but what they say is that the venue owners are allowing stoners to smoke or munch their edibles whilst viewing the trippy giant visualizations inspired by the Dutch artist's dreamlike works. Now, I mean, it's quite weird that they're condoning that sort of behaviour, but to me, that means you're moving yourself probably away from what Van Gogh wanted you to see. You know, if you're going to use mind-altering substances in a situation where already it's going to be different from what you're used to, you know, you're going to interpret it differently, aren't you?
Oh, that is quite a fascinating. I mean, that's quite funny. That has made me laugh, but it's a fascinating area, and one which, you know, perhaps we should explore a little bit more on some other occasion, because there is a kind of growing body of scientific evidence in support of the idea of microdosing as an approach to improving mental health. So that'd be one thing. And also, I might have mentioned this to you, which I know is not quite the same as getting off your face and wandering around looking at some Van Gogh, but you know, it's in the same sort of syndrome. And I think I mentioned to you that I listened to an interview with, do you know the singer-songwriter Laura Marling? Have you heard of her?
No.
No, well, she's quite big in the kind of folky type world, so that's why you don't know, because she's not death metal.
Well, quite.
But she was, in this interview that I was listening to with her, she was talking about how she felt that microdosing had actually helped the artistic process for her and helped her to create her art. So I think you're probably right that the idea of just getting off your face and going around an art exhibition is probably taking that idea a bit too far. But there probably is something worthy of debate in there at some point between the two of us, because it would be quite an interesting topic to investigate, I think. So what was the second thing you wanted to float past me?
The second thing, it's not strictly related to alcohol, drugs, but it sort of illustrates, we talked about society's attitude and relationship with alcohol, but this one just illustrates the way we think about food and the way that it can be quite destructive as well. But there's a cafe in Doncaster that has created a full English breakfast that contains 17,000 calories. Okay.
Oh my God.
And it's £40. You pay your £40 and you get your £40 back if you can cram it down within an hour. Now, I can't see anything good about that. But the owners have said they've created it so they can give diners something to look forward to after a year of closures. Now,
what are they saying that people can look forward to a heart attack?
Well, it just shows, you know, we've got an obesity problem in the UK, haven't we? Yeah. And now other countries do have that problem as well. But this just seems to be extraordinarily bad management, or bad, or it's just a bad idea, isn't it? I mean, it's awful, isn't it? Encouraging people to take that many calories on board in a shorter period of time possible, as a business.
It's funny, isn't it? We seem to equate having a good time with self-abuse. You know, having a drink or a full English breakfast, fine. But when it gets to the point where you are justifying something which is so excessive that it's damaging you, as well, it's fair enough, we've earned that because it's been such a difficult year. What you mean, you've gone through a difficult year, so you've earned the right to do something that will be destructive to you. I mean, it's just weird. It's just really strange logic.
It is bad. It's like it reminds me a little bit. I know we discussed it before about that the local bar that was doing bottomless prosecco at breakfast, where which again, I'm thinking about what a destructive message that was giving out. But going back to this English breakfast, this full English breakfast, it does link a little bit to in with that first. The first article I wrote about the Van Gogh exhibition, because I was thinking that all the stoners, when they come out of there, right, they
definitely want one, won't they?
They will. They get on a plane to Doncaster, and when the munches are properly kicking in, 17,000 calories would be a breeze, wouldn't it?
That'd be the perfect day out for them, wouldn't it? So get absolutely off your head. Look at a bit of Van Gogh, then get yourself a 17,000 calorie full English. Spend the rest of the day sleeping it off.
Exactly, yeah. I hope, anyway, I hope those two articles that I was talking about, I hope they haven't traumatised you too much, and then we can crack on with what I wanted to talk about.
It's a terrible segue.
Yeah, it wasn't very good, really, was it? But we've had so many people come into groups, as I said at the start of the episode, who've suffered enormous trauma, and quite a number of people have come in with a diagnosis of PTSD. Some of them have been military, or ex-military, which I think a lot of cases you hear about. Often it's linked to trauma suffered whilst on duty in the military. And I know I went on a military mindset training day once to deal with people that coming into groups who exactly had that issue, which was really interesting. But we're finding it more and more where people are coming in and have got this diagnosis that aren't in the military. So they've got PTSD from trauma that's happened. Some of them you'd think, that doesn't sound that traumatic, but to the person that's involved in it, obviously it is, and it's affecting them a great deal. Going through very stressful, frightening, or distressing events that causes trauma, they're sort of individualised as well, aren't they?
Yeah, if you think about the definition of trauma as being something like a disturbing or distressing experience, then by definition that is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So what someone might feel is okay, someone else might. I mean, you think about something like death. It's very easy to be traumatized by the death of somebody but that doesn't mean that every time someone dies that you'll be traumatized.
I always reckon there's wounds that never show on the body that are deeper and more hurtful than anything that bleeds. And I've always quite liked that quote because I think that it sums up a lot of the pain we go through. Certainly in the recovery community where we've used drink and drugs for a long time to cover up that pain.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to you really about, in your experience as a therapist, when I was doing some research on it, it looks like there's sort of stages of trauma, which I sort of just wanted to go through with you really and just see what you thought and whether they have gone through this sort of system. And then we'll talk about afterwards how best to deal with it. Okay. But the first stage, it seemed to be quite common across all the articles, was shock and denial. There's a state of disbelief and a numbed feeling when the actual set of events unfold before you.
That shock is like almost like the mind, the body saying, "Oh, hang on, I'm trying to process too much information in one moment." It's almost like a closing down.
But pain and guilt seem to be the next stage people go through as well. Certainly I went through it with, when my younger brother died, is there anything I could have done, for example, or, and so the pain of losing that person was immense. But then you go through these different changes in emotions over the sort of days and weeks and months that follow. Yeah, and the guilt does come into play. I saw my parents go through this terrible guilt over it all, even though there's nothing they could have done or could have had any input as anyone in the family could, or friends could have done so. It was an illness that happened and bang, it was all over very quickly.
We are so out of control in that situation. It's like, when we're looking for, well, what could I have done differently? It's almost like a way of trying to take control of a situation that is completely without control. We're trying to make sense of something that you can't make sense of, particularly when someone dies suddenly.
Yeah. I suppose you're looking at some reason, when you're trying to reason with it. I'm just thinking at the moment, just something that sprung to mind, those poor people in Afghanistan at the moment who are desperately trying to get away. And you can see the pain on their faces, those people struggling to get on aeroplanes or get out of the country. And they probably, they're probably thinking, have I done something to, I know when I was interviewing someone, they was almost feeling a bit good, have I done something that's caused this? They're relaying or going over their own emotions or going over their own behaviour and says, is there something I could have done differently that could have helped to stop this? But
yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that struggle with trauma after that, because that is a sudden their lives have been completely tipped upside down without any real warning. But I think in trauma, there's an absence of rational thought, isn't there? You don't have the capacity to think rationally.
The next one was anger, or anger and bargaining, they called it. But it was anger, which again I can relate to. Okay, but that is again with bereavement. It's very easy with that.
if you speak to a recovering alcoholic or you speak to someone in a peer support group, you will be able to find some sort of trauma in their background, but that won't necessarily have been death. You know, it might they had a very difficult childhood or abusive childhood, or parents were violent with one another, or all manner of things could have happened.
The stage of anger, I think that can relate across to all sorts of different sorts of traumas. When you're angry that it's happened, angry about that someone's been that if someone has been abusive towards you, you're angry about that. You're angry in bereavement. You're certainly angry that they've left you, or you're angry about the circumstances in which they've died. But yes, all sorts of trauma. I think it seemed to me when I was reading up about this, it just seemed to be going through you go through that cycle of emotions like you do with bereavement.
Yeah, the thing about anger, I think what's important about that is when I was thinking about trauma, I thought, well, what it tends to do with something like anger, what you then focus on, or addiction, you're focusing on the behaviour that has probably come about as a result of the trauma, rather than looking at the root issue. So, for instance, if you have a problem with anger or violence and it is rooted in some difficulty you had in childhood, maybe you were, abused or whatever, then you might end up in prison and people will kind of cast you aside and say, well, you're a bad person because you've done this. But really, you've only got your eyes then on the behaviour, the way that person has behaved. You're not really thinking about what is it that has created that behaviour. And I think in society, that's the issue that we have. We tend to treat behaviours. We tend to determine what we think of people by looking at their behaviours. We don't go far enough to think about what is it that's caused that. Why would someone behave like that? This idea that we think of people as some people are good people and some people are bad people, I think is very short-sighted and actually in the long run destructive to the fabric of our society. But if you believe that fundamentally we're all born trying to do our best for ourselves, and when things go wrong, that's when it can kind of subvert our good intention and we end up, doing bad things, then it goes to, it's obvious, isn't it, that the right intervention at the right time might be able to stop some of those things happening, which
I agree.
Most of us would have been interested in doing.
The next one was, which for me, after through the shock and denial and the pain and the guilt and the anger, comes the depression, which I remember that coming upon me, and I know where it's where addicts like me started to imbibe and started to lean on a drug of choice. I certainly did, to help me deal with the trauma that I was going through. And when you talk to these people in groups that have been through all sorts of traumas, but it's all led us to the same place. Those people in recovery, obviously, it's going to be a microcosm of society, of what the way other people deal with it. But certainly in the recovery community, we're there because we've dealt with trauma with drinking drugs. I'd already finished my notes before I watched the programme on the TV where Fern Britton is interviewing the boxer Nigel Benn. But he was, the programme is on a Sunday morning where they are looking at people that have sort of found God and have used religion and to make sense of things. But he was traumatised at an early age when he was about 8 or 9 when his elder brother was murdered. And so you can imagine that's going to have a massive impact, isn't it? And he went through all these stages because I looked at my notes and said, I can see he's gone through these stages. So again, that was definitely bereavement linked on that one. But he was able to eventually went into the army and was then but he said he held on to that anger. That took him right the way through his army career, his 5 years that he was in the army, and right the way through his boxing career as well. He never let that anger go. And it wasn't until he finished fighting and he's found religion and he's found another way of meditation and a way of making sense of things that he's been able to rationalise it all. But he spent the whole of his life dealing with that trauma, or not dealing with it, I should say. Yeah,
and so for someone like Nigel Benn, the anger that was resultant from his trauma, actually, he was able to use that in a positive way. We've spoken about that before. He was channeling that anger that came from a terrible situation, and he channeled it in his professional life, first as a soldier and as a boxer. And I don't know what sort of soldier he was, but he was certainly a very successful boxer. So, The fact that he was in a ring smacking bells out of people rather than on the streets doing it is a reminder that, anger in and of itself is not bad. It's about what you do with it.
Well, that's right, because he'd spent most of his youth before he went into the army street fighting.
There you go.
He was honing his skills there, unsuspecting passers-by. But I think he went into the army because his elder brother was in the army, and it took him in, and it sort of straightened him out. But as soon as he went into the army, he started boxing, and the whole of his army career was really built around becoming a boxer. Yeah. It suited him perfectly. So he found his way through there. But normally, if people come into you, come and talk to you and say, "I've got these issues," and you realise that a lot of their problems are based around a trauma that has happened to them. How do you unpack that?
Totally depends on the person and the trauma. I don't think there is a way. It's like there isn't one way to deal with it. It would depend what it was. So for some people, it might. I think we've probably touched on this in the past. Some people might take weeks, if not months, to actually get to the point where they want to talk about the root of their trauma. I've worked with people who I've probably seen for 6 months, maybe longer, before they'll feel comfortable enough in their relationship with me to tell me about, the fact they were abused as children or whatever it might be. So there's something there. I suppose part of the answer to that is that there's something in working through trauma that is relational. There's something about feeling comfortable enough to unpack it. So what quite often happens with trauma, understandably, is that we kind of put it in a box and we put the lid down on the box and we don't want to look at it. And so our way of not looking at it is we never talk about it to anyone. If anyone does know about it and asks us about it, we don't want to talk about it. But most people probably in our lives don't even know about it. And I suppose part of the benefit of therapy is that you hope that you're able to develop a relationship with your therapist where you can take the stuff out of those boxes, where you can start talking about things that maybe you've never spoken about to anyone else. And that when you do so, you start to understand that you're not going to be judged. It doesn't necessarily make everything worse. It won't have to necessarily trigger all of those old emotions, although, it can do. Because you can't really deal with something. You can't really process something in that way unless you're prepared to kind of face it and look at it, which is obviously one of the things that people find very difficult with trauma. It's one of the reasons why some trauma approaches, deliberately try and avoid the person talking about what's happened to them. So there are, again, so that's why it depends. Sometimes the benefit will be in talking about it, and sometimes the benefit will be in finding ways of working with it without having to directly get the person to kind of relive it. So it just depends.
Yeah, that's a vague enough answer for me to go up to my next point, I think. Yeah. No, I just think because a lot of people that come to groups and are considering going to therapy, or I know they have to wait a long time to get therapy on the NHS, and they say, I'm not sure if I'm ready to deal with the pain. They can see that they're going to go and start opening up all these boxes of pain. They're going to start to delve into them, and they're not going to be able to handle that very well, and perhaps that's going to take them back to their drug of choice, or they're worried about what stuff is going to come out that they're not ready for, and so it's sometimes I think perhaps people are putting up barriers because I think surely talking about it, and there's going to be a little pain initially, but that's the way to exorcise that particular demon, isn't it?
Part of what you hope for in therapy is because, and this is one of the reasons that boundaries in therapy are so important. What you hope to be able to achieve in therapy is a process by which we do take that. So using that kind of box metaphor, you want to be able to have a session where you can take the stuff out of the box, but then you can put it back in before the end of the session. So what you don't want to do is to let someone open the box, get all the stuff out, and then send them off out into the world without feeling as if you said, okay, we're kind of nearing the end for this week. What do we need to do to make sure this kind of stuff goes back in the box and we can, revisit it, get it out again next week? I mean, that's a little bit of a crass description, but that's the idea, that someone feels sufficiently safe in that therapeutic space, that it gets to the point where they feel okay about talking about that stuff, and then we can bring it to a close and they can go away again and they can live their normal everyday life, because they know that next week they'll be back again at 4:00 on a Tuesday and they'll be able to talk about it again.
Oh, that's a really important point, because I think some people are worried about going in getting therapy with exactly that situation where the box gets opened up or the wounds get opened, and it's going to take ages or an awful long time to heal again. But if you're making proactive steps to sort of package that away again at the end of each session, I think that's quite an important thing to remember. Because I know certainly, again, if people are getting help from the NHS, where they're only going to get between 6 and 10 sessions, and I know you and I have spoken about this in the past, that's not really enough, is it, to deal with the issues? But it may, if you are packing away at the end of each session, it's going to have some sort of help, isn't it? It's going to have some sort of benefit.
It is, and I've certainly had that conversation with people in the past about, in some cases, 6 sessions is, might for some people be worse than none. Because you get to a point where you feel like, oh, I'm just getting somewhere now. I'm just opening up. I'm beginning to feel like this is something I can talk about, particularly if it's been something years and years and years in the making and you've been holding on to it. I can totally understand that some people would think, well, if it's 6 sessions, if it's 6 50-minute sessions, then I might as well not bother opening those boxes, because I'll only have got, I've got 50 boxes and I'll only have got to the bottom of the second one.
Yeah, I think again, when I was doing the research, I think everything, whichever article I was reading, they all linked towards, at the end of it, was saying, go and get yourself a good therapist, because trauma won't sort itself out on its own. It is something that needs to be talked about.
People feel shame about things that have traumatized them. And they don't want to tell people that are closest to them. I think I've said to you before, I think we spoke about it a few weeks ago, that I feel really humbled that a lot of people will tell me things they've never told anybody. But part of the reason that people can tell me things they've never told anybody is because I don't have any other involvement in their life. You will be treated with unconditional positive regard. We're trying to look at the person, not the behaviour.
Good. Well, that's all I wanted to talk. That's all I wanted to talk about. Really, there's one thing I did forget to say. It is on my notes. It's right at the start, and I went by. It was about the feedback from last week.
Oh, was there some good feedback then?
From my older brother Russ.
Oh,
who's he listens to our podcast from time to time, but he said when we were talking about management speak, which I know he's been subjected to in the past, and so he could properly relate to it, but it really made him laugh about the stir frying an idea and you think what one. He thought it was really funny. He said he found himself laughing out loud at that one. At least we are making some people laugh as well. We can move on, if you like, then to our gratitude list.
Okay, right.
Do you want to shall I choose you a number so you can do yours first?
Yeah, go on then.
I was going to put down for you, because I know you've got a list of, you wrote this out some time ago, between numbers 1 and 17. I've been keeping a note of which ones I've used. But I want to just go on to number 10 if I can.
Trevor Brooking. I guess everybody would have something similar. It won't be the same, but everyone will have one of these, because number 10 is the 1980s. So,
right, okay.
I think we all have a kind of seminal decade, don't we? Where perhaps, I suppose for most of us, it's those years where we've grown up, we're growing up, and we're doing all those things that we do when we're sort of in our late teens, early 20s. And as the years have gone by, as I've got older, I find myself looking back with greater and greater fondness on the 1980s. And the other thing that I really notice is that I see little tiny things, or I get little tiny memories of that time that feels like, people say when you think back to the summers of your childhood, it seems like they were always sunny.
Yes.
That's the way I feel about the 1980s now. Whenever I think back to the 1980s, I always have this, I immediately get this kind of image of sunny days and band rehearsals and going down the chip shop and, when we used to rehearse at the Labour Party headquarters.
Yeah, that's true, yes. Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, and so I know it's quite a big sprawling one, but, 1980s music, the stuff that I hated at the time, it's such a nostalgia trip for me now. If ever, I would go as far as to say, if ever I'm feeling a little bit blue and I kind of need to make myself not necessarily feel happy, but melancholic in a kind of nice way, I can just listen to some 80s music. It takes me straight back there, and it's like I'm back in the 1980s. And the funniest thing about it is that I know if I was back in the 1980s, I spent a lot of that decade really miserable. So I don't know why I feel so fondly about it, but I do. So I'm grateful. Grateful for it.
Okay, well, that's quite a good one, actually. I haven't really thought about it myself on that, but you're right. I mean, I suppose between those ages, for me, that sort of golden period was probably, when I'd got a job. I was still living at home, so plenty of disposable income. I had no responsibilities. I hadn't got married. I hadn't any children. I hadn't bought a house or anything.
Exactly.
And everything, you could do exactly what you wanted when you wanted, really. And that was so. It would have been. You're bound to look upon that period of your life with fondness and great nostalgia, aren't you?
Yeah, down the pub every day.
Do whatever well, that's start of my problems, to be honest. Yeah, it's your influence made me do it. Yeah, I'm holding you fully responsible.
You're older than me. You're older than me. You should have taken a bit more responsibility.
Okay, well, on my gratitude list, it's quite easy this week, which was I did have something different when I first did the notes, but I'll save that for another time. But I'm going to put down going to my grandson's birthday party on Sunday.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, that's nice.
I'm grateful for that, not just the fact that, it's great to see him growing up. He's 3 now and he's becoming, a proper little person, and that you can interact and it's a joy to be around. But it just reminds me of one of the joys of sobriety and I remember when Emily first contacted me to tell me that she was pregnant, I remember being really tearful about it because it was such a great moment that I knew if I hadn't have got my drinking under control, hadn't have gone into to do my detox and my rehab, I wouldn't have been around. I'd have been long in the ground. And so these moments come along and you think, it's a real joy.
Yeah, they're gifts, aren't they, for you?
To get it. Yes, they are. Absolute gifts. Every day is a gift, but when it gets embellished by something like that, it brought me real gratitude.
Very good. I like that. Did you have birthday parties when you were a kid?
Now and again, but they weren't a regular feature. No.
Yeah, I had birthday parties. I can remember when I was quite small, because most of my friends, I think, were a little bit older than me, but I was a right little shit at my birthday parties. I used to have a right sulk if I didn't win things like Pass the Parcel and stuff. Quite surprised anyone wanted to come to my party, because they must have thought, oh, Christ, it's Graham's bloody birthday party. We don't want to go to that. He's such a moody little bastard.
Yeah, that's certainly true. That's stayed with you, isn't it? That
it has. I just want to say to anybody that's listening that did go to my early birthday parties, I'm sorry.
Did John White?
Yeah, John would have done. John would have gone.
John would. Yeah. Okay, because he listens. So
it's his birthday today.
It is his birthday. Happy birthday, John.
Yeah, except it won't be his birthday when this goes out.
Oh yeah.
Happy birthday for Monday, John.
Yeah, that's it. You've date stamped it now. It's ideal.
Yeah.
So Spotify search then. Should we go on to that?
Yeah, can we? Because I'm desperate for the toilet now.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to drag this out as long as possible.
You've managed it. It's been a long old episode, this one.
But the first one I was listening to was Post-Traumatic Trust Issues by Chris Crack, which I quite like the name of him.
Chris Crack.
Chris Crack. He's a Chicago-based hip-hop artist. Good track. It's a good track, but I'm not putting it on. But I like the name.
I'm glad you're not putting that on, because that's mocking a very serious mental health issue.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
There's another track called "Traumatized" by Fred, and the band was Slund. All right. Now they're a Slovenian sludge metal band. If you like,
sludge metal.
Sludge, but it sounds exactly the same. We had Worm Rot the other day, a few episodes ago. Yeah, it sounds exactly the same as that. Same sort of stuff. Right. They call themselves.
Have you put that on
sludge. There?
Hey, have you put that on there?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't put it on there. What I've put on there a track I think which you quite like. It's called "Poor Traumatized You" by the Wood Demons. They're London-based, sort of an indie rock band, but when I was researching them, they do a lot of prog rock festivals and stuff, so they're a bit more prog rocky. So you probably get alongside them. But I liked the sort of orchestral arrangement in the song, and I thought there's some nice violins in it and that, and it's a great little track. So I put that on there. So have a little listen to it, because I think you will like it. By the Wood Demons.
All right, I'm not sure about prog rock festivals. They sound a bit Marillion. Although, of course, if I listened to Kayleigh by Marillion, that'd take me back to the 1980s, and obviously I'd be very happy then.
Yes, you would. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kayleigh's a great track anyway. It stands up on its own.
You look a bit like Fish. I was thinking of a particular fish. It's actually a haddock you look like.
Anyway, I can't keep you away from your wee any longer. I've tried.
No, I'm desperate for a wee now. See you anon.
Good. See you later.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.